don't be rude to someone for no reason.
Well,
you don't know what they're going through.
Yeah,
I just went through this thing. He didn't know, and yet he still was rude like that.
Hey everyone.
We're back. Did you miss us?
Did ya? We are back with
We are back.
all new episode.
We do apologize for missing last week, but
We blame French.
things just français.
En français, we
So.
are not fluent.
And we're no longer taking it.
You'll
Brief-
never see me
We're
again.
doing a brief hiatus on the français.
We are. But, anyways, to be continued. We missed
Yes.
last week. We do apologize.
We do apologize. That sounded French.
That did sound French.
Nous sommes apologes.
Okay, anyways.
So obviously missing a week. There's a lot of things we miss in turn, to talk about that's going on right now. So we are going to be talking about, obviously Taylor Swift, Red, Adele's 30, big hot topics. But stay tuned because we're going to do an extra flirty session that's going to be coming your way soon.
Yeah, keep your
And
eyes
we'll do a little
peeled.
deep dive on those.
Cute little flurries.
So flurries, yeah, she's still sticking with it. We got flurries today.
We
So,
do. On this crisp, who knows when we're recording day.
Surprise. So today we are talking about something more serious, and I think we're probably just going to jump right into it.
Yeah, it doesn't need an introduction, I don't think.
Just to give a little trigger warning off the top, we're talking about grief, and we're talking about losing a loved one. So this episode is meant to be something that you can listen to, get some tips on how to deal with grief, how to support someone that you love who's dealing with grief. So it's meant to be more of a positive outcome. But if you are dealing with it in the moment, and you think it might just be too tough to hear, then certainly flag this episode to listen to down the road.
Yeah.
But we do hope that you do listen because we're going to give some good
Yeah,
pointers.
I think it's one of those things too that it's important all the time, obviously, but around the holidays, not just Christmas, just any significant period in time, it's always worse. And that's coming from somebody on a support level, which we'll get to, versus somebody going through it. So I'll let you...
Yeah, so I'm going to tell my story of dealing with grief and dealing with losing a loved one. And it's been 4 years, almost 5 years. So I would say I'm in a better headspace for sure, but obviously things do get emotional. So I'm just going to take my time. I'm not going to get into too many specifics about what happened, just a brief little overview. And I've said it before on the podcast that I did lose my mom. So back in the spring of 2015, my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. And my mom was the kind of person that didn't want pity, didn't want people to feel bad for her. She was not closed off, but just very private. And she's got 3 kids. There's me, my brother, and my sister. And she would do anything, obviously, as any mother, to protect her kids. So I think looking back, she didn't tell us the full story as she was going through it. So at that time, we thought, okay, she's diagnosed. She's got, a lump in her breast. We can beat this. Looking back, I think she was maybe told that it was aggressive and maybe at stage 3 or 4 from the get-go. But she didn't want to worry us. But so she got diagnosed, and then throughout that summer of 2015, she went through the chemotherapy. So I took her to most of her appointments. And then in September of 2015, she had the surgery. And so she only had the cancer in one breast, but she opted to get both removed because that's what they recommend, right? Just to kind of deplete the chances of it spreading into that other breast, whether now or down the road. So she had the surgery. The surgery was very successful. And then the plan was for her to take some radiotherapy. Is that what it's called?
Chemotherapy?
Radiology?
Radiology's...
Radiotherapy? I'm having a brain fart. Anyway, radiotherapy.
You would know better than I would.
Radiology. It's what they...
A radiologist does like the...
It's part of the cancer treatment anyway.
A radiologist? It's a radiologist.
Radiologist. What did I say?
I said radiologist.
Oh. Anyway, we are not medical professionals, but she was going through radiology that was part of the treatment plan.
Yeah.
In November of 2015, after the surgery, after the chemo, she was told she was cancer-free. We were told she was cancer-free. And during chemo, you know, like she lost her hair. Luckily, through chemo, she wasn't very sick. She was just kind of tired, but no nausea, no like sick in bed, none of that, which is very thankful. So we were told she was cancer-free. She started doing the radiology as part of the treatment plan, but we had a really good Christmas that year because she was getting her life back on track. Her hair was growing back out. Things were great. And then Christmas went by and it was into the new year. So about mid-January of 2016, I remember I was out, I think it was at Walmart with my boyfriend at the time and a friend of mine. And I got a call from my stepfather who said, oh, like, your mom's in the hospital, but don't worry. She just had a little bit of a neurological issue. We think it's from the radiation. That's what it's called, the radiation.
Right.
But don't worry. You don't got to come down or anything. Like, she'll be fine.
Yep.
So that was it. And then later on that night, my aunt called me and said, you need to come to the hospital. She said, your
So it happened very fast.
Very fast. Your mom's not doing well. Just come down to the hospital. So my boyfriend and I and a friend of his that was down with him visiting.
Were you traveling during this time? Like, what hospital was she in? Was it close?
Yeah,
was she close by?
So my family lives about an hour and a half away from where we live here in the city.
Yep.
So I was like, during this whole ordeal on the weekends, I was...
So you had to travel.
Traveling down basically to see her a lot and take her to her appointments.
So she was in the major city.
Yeah, some of her appointments was up here in the city, but some of them were down in her local hospital.
Okay.
So I had to drive down 2 hours.
Which the anxiety and stuff would just be off the charts.
My friend drove, and me and my boyfriend in the back seat. He was holding me because I was just...
of course,
right?
Of course, yeah.
So we got to the hospital. She was unconscious.
Okay.
And we were basically told... We weren't told too much at that point overnight. I stayed with her overnight, obviously. And then the next day, after a couple hours of waiting, not knowing what was going on, the doctor finally came in and basically said that the cancer spread to her brain. And
just like that.
Just like that.
So, well, I'll get to it.
And I said, well, wait a minute. We were told she was cancer-free. Like, what happened?
That's what I was just going to ask you.
And the doctor, and it wasn't, this doctor was just the doctor on call. It wasn't, she wasn't
the doctor.
She wasn't an oncologist or anything. She just said that she knows that with breast cancer patients, about 1 in 100 will have it spread to the brain. Usually breast cancer spreads to the spine and you get back and shoulder issues. She said 1 in 100 it will go to her brain. So she said it's likely that when they did the scan after the surgery, they didn't check the brain because the statistics were so low. I remember, no joke, I looked at that doctor and I said, yeah. I pointed to my mom and I said, there's your 1 in 100 right there.
Yeah. Wow.
And that was it. She had, it wasn't brain cancer because they still call it breast cancer.
Yes.
It just metastasized to the brain. So that whole year, we'll say, so that was January 2016, right up until November 2016, she was in and out of the hospital a lot. So she could no longer drive. So I had her car and she would have seizures off and on. That's what the symptoms were. These seizures would happen randomly. She'd be sent to the hospital for a few days and she would come back home and she'd be kind of fine. And then another seizure would happen and that was kind of it for the year. But then in November 2016, she had another seizure that paralyzed her. Oh, God. So after that, she couldn't move on her own. Right. So we as a family, me, my stepfather, my aunt, we all had to take care of her. Yep. Right? Dressed her.
And do what you have to do.
Moved her from the bed to the chair. If she used the washroom.
How long was she
deal with all that. So this was November to March.
Okay.
So a couple months.
Which probably felt like a lifetime.
Yeah, a long time.
Yeah.
So then in March of 2017, got a call. Oh, your mom's in the hospital again. I'm thinking, okay, like I'll come down. We'll see her. A few days, she'll be back home again.
Yep, of course.
So I get there and that wasn't the case. She only had a little bit of time left and she was completely unconscious. All the family was there. My boyfriend came down. My stepmother came down. My grandparents, like the whole family was there. And
it's okay.
And then a few days of that, she passed. Yeah. And that was that was it. So that's all I really want to say about what happened. It was a really hard time, and
I think too, like, I think it's one of those things, like, I've never gone through like I say hardcore grief. All grief is different. We've talked about this before. People experience different things, whether it's loss of a job or a loss of a parent. Like, they're all different, but they're also, grief is grief.
And goes through this. You go through a lot of the same emotions.
You do. And I remember my dad got sick. I say got sick, not with, thank goodness, with anything. He was in the hospital a few years ago. And now when I look back on that situation, I'm always like, how did I get through it? Like, but you don't. You like float up outside your body.
Exactly.
And you just
100%.
It's the only way to explain it. Yeah. And I think, like, I look back on it, I'm like, I can't believe I made it through that. So I can't imagine.
Yeah. And the funny thing, when I say, like, that moment, right, that she passed, we were all there. I was literally nestled into her.
Yeah.
But I don't remember it.
I know.
Because it feels like it just didn't happen.
It's like a dream.
It was like an out-of-body experience. Like,
now, listening to your story, I mean, I've heard that story a couple times. And every time you always refer to that Christmas. And it's nice that I don't want to speak for you, but like, that's got to feel good that you had that Christmas, because like there was some joy. I'm assuming.
Like it sucks that she had the hope of her life back and it got taken away.
Yeah.
But
she got that hope.
Probably the best Christmas I ever had. Like, she was never more excited.
Yeah.
Like, my mom was always big on Christmas anyway. And that year, like, every single tradition we've ever had, she made sure that it was done that year. Whether it was getting the new ornaments for the tree, she got my brother, my siblings, like, our initials. That was every year we'd get an ornament for the tree, and that was the ornament for that year. All the baking, so she was just all the decorating, all the gift giving. It was. Yeah, it was.
So that's really special.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is nice.
Yeah. So now we're gonna talk a little bit about, when these things happen, how do you deal with the grief, and I'm gonna kind of talk about how I've dealt with it as I kind of go through it. And I think one of the big things is that you have to let yourself feel your feelings, whether that's sadness, whether it's anger. I tend to not let myself do that. I would say probably for the first 6 months that she passed, I didn't deal with anything.
You just kind of like pushed it down.
I numbed myself.
Yeah.
I tend to do that. I
didn't acknowledge it.
I ignore my feelings. I don't talk about it. I don't acknowledge it. It happened, and that was it.
Yep.
And what happened was I ended up going into a very deep depression, of course, as you would. Things were heavy. All kind of activities that I was interested in and loved, that was gone. Right? Like exercise was always such a big part of my life, and running. Completely stopped. Stopped all that altogether. And started having panic attacks, which I've had anxiety my whole life. I have an anxiety disorder. But up to that point, I never really dealt with it. I just kind of pushed it aside, as I do.
Yep.
And then, of course, going through this trauma, it lended itself into not only anxiety, but then also depression.
Right.
So you have the anxiety and the panic attacks, but then you also have the low moments of just, like, literally, like, I would go to work, go home, go to bed, cry, and that was it. But if anyone asked you at that time, they would say, oh, Joey's handling this really well. Yeah. He's coming to work. Yeah. He's, when in reality, no, I wasn't. I'm like my mom, private. I don't want pity. Like, that was just how I dealt with it.
I think too, like, again, I don't want to speak for you, but like, there really isn't anything, we'll get to this too, but like that anybody could say to you. You're just kind of dealing with it in your own way. And did you not talk to your siblings at all? Were they too young at the time?
Yeah, we did, but all three of us are the same.
Yeah.
We just
got it from your mama.
We did. We just don't talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. In retrospect, would you think that had helped you, or no? You handled it.
No. And that's what I mean. Like when these things happen, you have to let yourself feel what you need to feel. So if you need to take that day off work and just stay in bed and cry, you need to do that. Or if you need to be angry, and you need to, go for a nice long run, go take up boxing, do something to get out that anger, and recognize that it is 100% okay to feel that way.
Yeah.
And another big thing too, and this still, and this sticks with me today, is feeling guilty to be happy. So
I was just going to ask you.
So like I just mentioned, this time of year, Christmas was really big with my mom. After she passed, I still celebrated Christmas, but I didn't really do too much.
Of course.
Because, it reminded me of my mom, which is sad, but also it's like, well, she doesn't get to celebrate Christmas anymore, so why should I? Like, I don't want to be, doing decorating the tree and smiling and having a good time. Mom can't do that, so I shouldn't be doing that.
You have not survivor's guilt, but like
and I've come a long way since then, but there's still moments when you get that. It's hard to
and there's probably still certain things you avoid when it comes to Christmas. And I know that because even from even us talking, off mic.
Last year was the first time that I put up a tree and really decorated my own place because I just didn't have
the energy, the capacity,
desire, the mental. But in doing it, it made me realize, well, no, like doing that stuff, she would want you to do that stuff.
Oh my gosh,
she would want you to be happy.
She'd be right there with you. She is right there with you.
She wouldn't want you to not enjoy your life because that's not what she would want for her kids. Right?
No, yeah.
And another thing to remember too is that grief isn't just a thing that gets better with time. I mean, it does, but grief is always going to be part of you. So when I think of losing my mom, and dealing with the grief and having those moments of grief has become a part of who I am. So what I mean by that is now in the future, like a couple years after that had happened, I got a job promotion that I worked hard for. And your family, your friends are congratulating me. I'm happy. But then you have that moment where, man, I wish I could tell my mom about this though. Right? Like that never goes. So when you're thinking about grief, it's a huge thing and it's a scary thing. Gets easier with time, but you just have to realize it's always going to be a part of you. And that's okay. It's okay to have those moments. Like, even still, I still have panic attacks sometimes. Or I still have moments where I just can't see anybody. I need to just
be alone. And
And
the saying goes is, time heals, but time doesn't heal all.
No.
And I think this is a good example of, my mom and her sisters lost their father, 21 years ago. And I'm sure and I would love to talk to my mom about this, grief, it's changed for her 21 years later, but it hasn't gone away.
No.
And I think that's okay. I think that you just have to navigate it.
Yeah, and it's hard. I mean, there's never an easier time to lose a parent or to lose someone. But being in your 30s, or I was in my late 20s at the time, your life is just beginning.
Yeah.
Right. Like I had, the idea of like getting married someday, or buying my first home someday. Like the fact that my mom's not going to be there for any of that is really hard. And when it all first happened, it was like, well, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to get married if my mom can't be there. I'm not doing that. That was my whole thing, was like all these things that I thought I had planned out. I don't need them if mom's not going to be there. But it's like, no, you can have those moments and be happy and just know that this is what your mom or whoever wanted for you. Right? Yeah. And like one thing for me, it's like I have 3 aunts. 2 are my dad's sisters, and 1 is my mom's sister, and I'm really close to all 3 of them. And like one thing I thought of was, well, when you have your first dance, like the husband usually dances with his mother, and you have that dance where like, okay, well, I can't dance with my mother, but it'd be great to just dance with all 3 of my aunts. Right?
Oh gosh.
And mom would love that. Right? So it's
It just looks different.
Different ways. Yeah, it just looks different, but knowing that, that's what she would still want for you.
Yeah.
Especially when my brother and sister are younger than me, so they still have to go through all those experiences as well. Yes. And all three of us just have to do it a little differently and just remember that she is still with us and that's what she would want for us. Right?
Yes.
And another big thing too is letting yourself feel your feelings and also make sure that you're taking care of yourself. I think that's a big one. Mm-hmm. For me, like I have the tendency to, again, going with numbing your feelings, but also to distract yourself.
Right.
So I think I did take a couple weeks off. My boss was really, really great. He did all of the leave planning for me, so I didn't have to touch my vacation time. It was all through leave. It was all through leave that we get with like grief and like losing someone. Like we have that.
He manipulated it to kind of work out in your favor.
So it worked out for me. So I think I was able to have like 3 weeks off of work after that happened, which I spent with my family. But some people have the tendency to automatically distract themselves, like jump into work, take on big projects to kind of not deal with their feelings. And all that's going to do is really affect you in the long run. Because you're going to have that moment.
You're just prolonging it.
I know this because someone that I used to work with that had lost, when she lost her, like she was older than us, so she had already lost her father, her mother, and she didn't deal with it for 6 months. And then 6 months down the road, she had a huge anxiety panic attack and a huge, she just came undone because the grief that she wasn't dealing with caught up to her. Mm-hmm. And she wasn't taking care of herself. Right. She wasn't dealing with it.
It just all kind of boils up and
it all kind of boils up.
Yeah.
And a big thing too is exercise, making sure your body is moving, I think are really important. A lot of times we think of exercise for being fit and hot and trim and have a nice body, but fitness is really good for your mental health. I do it a lot for my mental health. So if I'm feeling overwhelmed, if I'm feeling angry or sad, sometimes just even going for a run or even just going to a trail and going for a nice walk and just breathing in the fresh air and just like letting all those feelings go can kind of bring you at peace.
Yeah.
And Brittany knows this. I'm a very woodsy person. I'm always walking in the trails, and that's where I was born and raised. And for that whole year, I didn't do any of that.
Right.
I just stopped, and that wasn't healthy. And making sure you're eating well as well. So a lot of people, the freshman 15, right? When you're stressed. And so you put on weight because you eat so much.
Yes.
I'm the opposite. I don't eat
you just
when I'm stressed.
Yeah.
So that year after Mom passed, I dropped weight. And I'm already a thin person in general. Mm-hmm. So I was very underweight. I was not well. I was not,
of course.
not eating, not taking care of myself. Sleeping too, like not sleeping well. Yeah. So you got to think of ways to deal with those issues. So meditation is something that I don't do it a whole lot now, but I used to do it a lot then. There's an app, I think it's called Headspace, that I used to use. And you can, even if it's just like a quick 1 minute.
Headspace is a good one. Calm.
When you're feeling those feelings, and if the weather's shitty, you can't get out for like a walk on a trail, just like go sit on your bed or sit on the floor, whatever you got to do. Throw on your headphones. I like doing it in headphones and just let it walk you through a meditation or put on your favorite song or just do whatever you need to do. Dance in your kitchen. Like these little silly things that are like, oh yeah, that's not going to help anything. It actually does.
They make a difference.
Right? It actually does. If you find yourself in a space where things are really bad, like I did, like, and we're talking about depression, like legit depression, there's a difference between being sad and being depressed. If you're going days and weeks of this heavy, heavy mental fog and you're not seeing anybody, you're not doing anything, you have no interest in anything, that's depression. And that's really unhealthy. And so you should go see your doctor and at least let him know how you're feeling.
Of course.
Like I can't sit here and say, oh, you should be on medication or you should go through therapy, but your doctor will tell you what you need to do. So for me, that was big. That took a lot to actually go to my doctor. Like I said, I had anxiety my whole life, and I should have been going to see a doctor for it, and I just never did. But going through that depression, I scared myself. There was a moment where I didn't want to live anymore.
Right.
I didn't want to go on anymore. Yeah. And not to get too much into it, but it was my boyfriend picked up on things where he was so worried, and he was long distance. He had to get my cousin to talk to me because he thought I was going to do something.
Yeah.
And it gave me the push to go to my doctor. And I have a lovely doctor. He's one of the best. Talk to him about how I'm feeling, how I'm dealing with it. And my doctor was my mother's doctor, so he knew exactly everything that had happened. Yeah. And I did go on medication. Yeah. And my only thing I can say, the difference like with being medicated, once the medication started working, it was like everything was lighter. Yeah. Everything was lighter. Yeah. There was no more heaviness. Yeah, you're still sad and you still have those emotions.
But you're not that deep sadness or that high.
I could be happy again. I could have interest in the things I wanted to do. And so I think if you're in a really dark headspace and you know that you're not dealing with the grief well, and these little tips of, going for a walk or going to the gym or meditating aren't enough, then definitely go to your doctor. Because that sometimes is a necessary step. Yeah. Yeah. Just a couple other things too. When you're going through grief, you're depressed, you're upset, you often are in a negative headspace. But it's important to always remember and share in the positive memories, right? And that's what my family often do. Like my brother and sister, if we're down, like we usually talk about mom, some of the funny stories, some of the things we went through with her. One story in particular that we always talk about and laugh at was when I was first going to university, and mom, the car was packed up. Mom was driving us up. My brother and sister were with us. We all kind of piled in and did the drive up. So this was like 2007. So like we all had the flip phones. But I wasn't attached to my phone because we didn't have Facebook and all that stuff wasn't on your phones then. Yeah. So I remember telling her, like, Mom, like, I'm going to lose this phone because I lose everything. You take my phone home and just keep it at home, and I'll just use it when I'm home and whatever. I don't need it up here with me because none of us were attached to our phones back then. Yeah. So she took it home, and then on the drive home, she had used it, and then she after she'd done using it, she just kind of put it in the cup holder, forgetting that she had a glass of pop.
Oh and she God.
Just threw it right into the pop. Phone damaged, ruined.
Just done.
Just on the way home. So it's like, okay, I should have just kept the phone with me.
Well, that's where you get it maybe. From.
But and that's like a silly story, but it's sometimes nice to just sit down and usually if I'm home at Christmas time or something, we'll get together and we'll just tell some funny stories. And
it's I thought you were going to say when you get home at Christmas time, you just drop your phone in a glass of Coke.
And it just takes your way back.
Yeah, no, I know. Those quirky little stories that are just one-off, and at the time you feel like they're funny but insignificant, they end up being significant later on. Yeah. And also, too, for me, if I'm sad or I'm, feeling whatever, I tend to isolate myself. I tend to not seek out other people. I tend to... And sometimes that's needed, right? If you're going through something. Oh, my gosh.
Sometimes you do need it, but it can get a bit too much. And you have to remember that your friends and your family are there to support you. And even to this day, I still have trouble with that. My dad and I still haven't really had a super serious, proper conversation about losing my mom. Yeah. And that's because of me. He's tried so many times to not that he wants to bring it up, but he's worried about me.
He wants to have a conversation.
And he wants to talk about it, and he wants to, let me know that he's there for me and if I need to talk about it. And I still can't. And even I
feel like you got to be in the mood.
Yeah. And even with friends, it's just, it's really hard. But I think it's important to know that sometimes getting things off your chest is what you need.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And don't feel like you're bothering someone. Don't feel like you're... my mom's been gone almost 5 years, but that doesn't matter how long it's been.
No. Like I said, her dad was 21 years.
And it's important to have those people. Yes. And I was lucky enough, too, that my boyfriend at the time, he had lost his father when he was younger. So he was someone that had shared that experience, and so he and I would. Maybe that's where I got my outlet. Was he and I would talk about it often,
which is great. I mean, not the circumstance.
No, but he had went through it, and he kind of knew
the resource, I guess.
Yeah, and kind of like your mom. Like, he was 11 when he lost his father. He was in his 30s, and we were together a long time, but still having PTSD and moments of grief.
Yes.
So
and you get worried too. Like, I'm sure my mom or my aunts would tell you that, like, there's got to be a level of concern. I don't know if that's the right word. That, like, the memories are going to fade, or you're not going to remember certain things any longer the longer life goes on. And I don't think that that's necessarily true. I think you hold things, sounds cheesy, but in your heart that just don't fade. And sometimes that's important to remember too. Like, just because that person's gone doesn't mean those memories are gone as well.
That's a really hard one, because one of my biggest fears right now is not remembering what she sounds like.
Yeah.
Because I don't have any recordings. I don't have any.
Do you have any videos? Any, like, at home?
Yeah, yes, I do. I can't watch them.
Yeah, of course. But you do have some sort of.
And my grandparents have, so she was on their answering machine. She was the voice that would say hi, whatever. So my grandfather can't delete it. Like, he just can't, which is completely fair.
Yeah.
But when I call them, I let it ring 4 times and I hang up, because there has been a few times when
they still have it.
Yeah. Wow. And my brother, I was down a few weeks ago, and my brother had a moment where he was upset because he couldn't remember her voice. Yeah. So he called and he got to listen to it, and that made him happy. But me and my sister, we can't yet.
Yeah, and I think something like that, you got to be in, like, I say, the mood or the
and that's the thing to remember too. It's like all 3 of us, we went through the same thing together, but we are all dealing with it a little differently. Yeah. And that's important to note. And I guess that does lead into my final thing is to do things that do remind you of them. Yes. So, my mom was always someone to, on a random day, like, oh, let's, like, jump in the car and go for a drive somewhere. Yeah. No destination in mind, let's just go. Yeah. And so often I will do that. I just jump in the car, go for a drive. Certain movies remind me of my mom. So, like, I always say, like, Stepmom is my favorite movie, and it's ironic given this plot of that movie, and I couldn't watch it for a while after she had passed, but, like, that was a movie that she and I watched together. She bought it for me on DVD one year, and I still have that DVD because it's important to me. Or Friends, that's my favorite TV show because that was her favorite TV show. Yep. And I remember Friends aired in, like, 1994. I was, like, 5 years old. I remember the night it aired because Mom was like, oh, I think I might want to watch this show. We did up some snacks, and we sat down together and watched Friends. And we did it every Thursday after that. Yeah. So a lot of those things, like, when you first lose someone and you're first dealing with grief, and you can't do those things anymore, that's really hard to deal with. It's really hard knowing that certain things that brought you joy with that person are no longer there. But just know that as time goes on, you're going to be able to do those things again. That will come back. Because it's going to turn into, oh, I can't do these, it's too sad, to being, you know what, I want to watch this movie because it reminds me of Mom. Yeah. And it gives me that feeling of she's here. Yeah. It makes you reminisce with the good times.
It changes.
And that's very important. Yeah. So those are my things of how I dealt with the grief. I don't know, maybe it was a little bit too brief, but it's hard still to talk about certain things. But
I think too, like what we had said at the beginning, is it's not, grief is a strange one because it's all the same, but it's also not all the same. People deal with it in different ways, and what worked for you might not work for somebody else, but it definitely might help because like the getting healthy for me, I can't imagine going through something like that and trying to get on an exercise bike because that was an outlet for a lot of people, you know what I mean, to exercise. But like maybe if I was going through something, that would be something I would want to try. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, oh, 100%. I didn't think of that. I guess I could give it a go. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And on the other end of things, being the other side of it where I haven't dealt with grief like that, to that, you know, I've lost, and I hate to bring this up, but I did lose a cat. Not the same,
but still very
hard.
But
I was devastated. So I can imagine my devastation
becomes part of your family
compared to like a human being. Okay. Like I can't imagine. And And my partner, he had lost a few years ago, I'm almost a decade now, his best friend. And it's one of those things that we don't talk about. I didn't know his best friend. We would do little things like go to his grave and, on his birthday and that kind of thing. But we didn't really talk about it. He's not really a talker. I still don't really, I know the story and everything, but I still don't know, the bulk of it. And that's because just like you don't like to necessarily talk, I'm not a confrontational person. So I'll never pry for information. And so that can be really hard supporting somebody with grief. So I was doing some research, and please step in if you think that that's not something that you would have needed at the time. So like, how do you support somebody with grief? I'm just going to kind of run through them because obviously they're up for interpretation, and you have to always read the room, like read the situation. But things that you can do that would make a difference in their life as far as like if they are grieving. So 5 things would be drop off meals. I'm assuming that would have been helpful.
We had lots of meals in the house. Yeah.
Yep. Offer to help with chores.
Yep.
And that seems really silly to offer that, but like even just having some normalcy in the home,
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you're doing dishes. I don't know if you're doing dishes. I don't know. Oh. Just Joey's choking over there. But you know what I mean?
It's funny because that's 100% a good point. Me and my stepfather, when we're stressed out, we're both the same, where we clean up. We clean everything.
Yeah.
It's like
a coping mechanism.
Yeah. So that house was never cleaner
like
during that time period.
Right. So offering help with chores. Cook at their house. I thought that was a really interesting one because that does, again, bring in the normalcy. Even if they're just sitting there watching TV or just having somebody clinking around in the kitchen.
Even the comfort of having someone in the background. Yeah. Especially if they live alone.
Exactly. Offer to do errands for them, and that can be something as simple as picking something up at the grocery store or dropping off dry cleaning. I don't know who dry cleans anymore, but the mail. Offer to just sit and be present and just be there. And then on the other side of that, non-physical activities would just be reach out often, help find ways to help them navigate. So like, what can I do? Right? Like, what can I do for you? Listen more than you speak was a good one. And then give them space if they need it. So, it's okay. You can have your space, but I will check in X amount of days.
Yes.
I think it's important. It's also important to note that grief has the 5 stages, right? Which we know that. Which are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. But they're not always in that order, and everybody handles it in a different way. And not all grief follows a easy, measurable path.
That's right.
So just be patient, but say something. I think when I was researching it, the thing I took out of the whole thing was that you have to say something.
And I think
even if it's I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think that's really good too. Like you had brought up about if they want to be alone and being like, okay, I'm going to give you your space, but I'm going to check up on you.
Yeah.
I think that's important too. If you are the person giving support, no matter how much that person is trying to push you away, don't let them.
Yeah.
Right? Just
give them a couple days and then text them. It's me again.
Always check up on them because it's important. Because even though they're saying they want to be alone, deep down they do need support.
For sure. Or just knowing that somebody is there.
And then another point you just mentioned up about, say something.
Anything.
So as I said, I think I said this before, like one of my best friends, after she passed, didn't message at all. And the reason behind it was she didn't know what to say. But it's like, okay, you could have literally said anything. You could have just said...
Say, I don't know what to say.
You could have just... All you got to do is say, look, I don't know what to say, but if you need anything, let me know. I am here for you. If you want to talk, if you want me to go through the McDonald's drive-thru and get you some nuggies, I will do that for you. Yeah. Whatever you need, I'm here.
Like I'm struggling to find the words, I'm here. Like that would be enough until you can gather your thoughts.
That's all I needed. Yeah. Like when I was going through that, I didn't want a bunch of people messaging me all the time. Right?
No. And that's another thing while you say that is I think if you are on the supporting end of things, if you don't get a response back from somebody who is grieving, it's not personal. No. They've read it. They appreciate it. Let's move on.
Yeah.
I don't want, you don't want to have any of this, oh, did you hear from so-and-so? Oh, I didn't hear from them. I heard from them. You just caught them at a time where they were able to respond. Yeah. It's nothing, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's still better to say something than nothing at all.
Exactly. 100%.
So, is there anything else that you can think of? That
so I actually wanted to end with some positive energy or some lighthearted energy and just share a couple little things to do with my mom and to do with the grief of what was happening. So one thing is there's a saying that, when you lose someone, if you find dimes, it means that they're with you or they're sending you those dimes. And for the first, few months, my aunt was finding them.
Yeah.
My stepfather was finding them.
Yeah.
I was not. And I was really upset.
Yeah.
Because even though it's like, is that true? Maybe not. But the fact that it wasn't happening for me did make me kind of upset.
Yeah.
And I remember one day I was cleaning my room and I had on a bookcase, a decorative little tray and a couple little items on it. And those items weren't on there for any particular reason other than it looked good. But it actually turned out the items were all things to do with mom, just randomly. So it was like my mom collected angels. And the last Christmas that we had with her, I got her, it was an angel statue and it had a little boy hugging the angel.
Yeah.
And when she opened it, I remember she said to me, "That's you and me." Right? So after she passed, I took that home with me.
Yeah,
so that was on there. I had a picture of her and me when I was a little kid. And I had a mug that she had bought me one year because she and I would collect the Tim Hortons mugs every Christmas. So I had that there. So randomly there, but all to do with her, but not on purpose to do with her.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was cleaning, and in the corner on that decorative tray was a dime.
How funny.
So I thought, okay, that's kind of weird. Maybe that is mom. And I left it there. I was like, I'm not going to touch it.
Yeah.
I don't want to move it. It stays there. I don't know, a few months after, cleaning again, not really thinking, and cleaning that little area, and I look, there was a dime sitting on top of that dime. And I kid you not, I didn't put another dime there. Weird. There was only one before, and then all of a sudden there was two there.
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain it.
You're like, it's like, Joe, you got to say something. We're on a podcast here.
It happened, and I like to think.
It's funny. My mom, my aunt Net, she's a hype girl. She always feathers and dimes, always
feathers too. Yes,
I've seen the dime boxes, and there's one that I saw the other day because I had heard about the dimes, and it says dimes appear when our angels are near. So it's funny that you bring that up because those are just those little things that you need.
Yeah,
that's too funny. 2 dimes.
I know.
20 cents.
Rich. But literally on top of each other. Like
Mom, if you could just leave a buck or two, a couple toonies.
Mom, an unlimited credit card would be nice.
Looking for an ice cap, Mom.
I want a little ice cap.
You love your ice caps. Yes, I know. That is a sweet story.
And another thing, too. So while she was going through her chemo and all of her treatments and stuff, her song that would kind of get her through it was Fight Song by Rachel Platten, I think.
I forgot about that one.
So we would play it and stuff. And we played it, the night before she passed. We played it for her and all that stuff. About a month after she had passed, I didn't have a car at the time. So I was taking a taxi to and from somewhere. It doesn't matter where. And the taxi driver was a real dick. We got into a big fight because he had one of those doors that automatically open. But I didn't know, so I went to shut it, and he was just like, "For fuck's sakes, don't shut that!" He just lost it, and I lost on him. And it was a whole thing, and this is only a few weeks after Mom passed. I was still very.
You're on edge.
On edge, right? And it's the thing to note, in our day-to-day life, don't be rude to someone for no reason. You don't know what they're going through. I had just went through this thing. He didn't know, and yet he still was rude like that. Yeah. Anyway, on the drive across the bridge, I was really upset. I was close to tears because all these emotions were coming up. He flicked on the radio, and that song was on.
How funny.
So I was like, okay, Mom's telling me, Joe.
Chill
out, man. It's not worth it. You're okay. And I was fine. Then, a year after that, I got my kitten, my Leafy.
Leaf, yes.
And a few months after I had him, actually, this was... Oh my God, this is exactly a year after that taxi fiasco. It was April. I was taking him in to get his balls chopped off. Get himself
probably
fixed.
Nicer ways to say that, but
so I dropped him off, and of course they tell you, cats when they go on anesthetic, there's always that slight chance that they won't make it because they're so sensitive to it. So, but it's like so rare that it would happen. So like I remember driving, I was supposed to go right back to the office and I'm leaving and I'm like crying because I'm just so scared I'm going to lose him. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to go to the office. I'm going to stop at this Tim's, get a coffee and just chill. So I go in there and I get my coffee and I sit down and I'm really upset. And on the radio in Tim's is Fight Song.
Wow.
Right? So it's like, again, I hear you, Mom. You're telling me, Joe, don't freak out.
Yeah.
It's all going to be fine.
It's all good. And it was.
So, yeah. So again, a little moment. That was just a little nice. And then just lastly, and this is a really, really important one. My mother was a donor. And of course, because she went through chemotherapy, there wasn't much that she could donate other than her corneas, I think is what she could. So yeah, we signed off on it and she donated the corneas. And then a few months after that, we got a letter saying that, you know, because of your mother's generosity, another person was able to see.
Oh,
she stopped someone
really
from
sweet.
Going blind. And we were invited, me, my brother, and my sister got invited to this event here in the city, this luncheon that kind of commemorated all those that had donated, had all the pictures.
Did you go?
We got to, the three of us went. We got to share a story of
Oh,
Mom.
that's nice.
I believe one of the things I told was the phone one.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
and we got a little plaque with her picture and the write-up. And
that's so nice.
Thing. Yeah, so...
There's those little things.
And I know people always say this, but like that was Mom.
Yeah.
Doing whatever she could for anyone else and leaving herself last. And that's what she did. So, yeah.
That's a nice way to end it.
That's a nice way to end.
I will say, if you are experiencing any sort of grief, there are resources out there for you. Yeah. And you know what? There's not a lot of them. They're all kind of hidden amongst other topics. So one of the resources that I came across when I was preparing for this episode was called mygrief.ca. It's a bunch of modules, discussion boards, help groups, really good resources that are kind of online versus calling somebody, which I thought would be helpful for somebody who maybe just doesn't want to speak to somebody right now but wants the resources. So mygrief.ca, it's Canadian. Of course, there's another one called Grief and Bereavement Resource Repository. This one was through the Canadian Hospice Palliative Care Association. So the website for that is www.chpaca.ca, which we'll probably post these online, I'm assuming. Yeah. This one was a little bit different because, again, it has a lot of resources. There's a bereavement day that they celebrate. So this is more kind of a celebratory, right, feel-good stories type situation. And then, as always, which Joey and I are huge advocates for, that if you're in crisis or going through a mental health situation or any kind of thing at all, you can always call the cmha.ca. That's the Canada Suicide Prevention Helpline. And that's not necessarily just if, you know, there are the resources out there for you. Call your doctor, call 911 if you're going to hurt yourself immediately.
And if you're someone that isn't sure, like if you don't have a family doctor and you don't know where to go, and if you're someone that doesn't have health benefits, like our place of work has the EAP, the Employee Assistance Program.
Yes.
And I think maybe a lot of companies, I think, have certain programs like these now where for us, like you just call a number and you talk to someone and they basically help you find like a counselor that you can go see and it's completely free. So
yeah. And we'll post all of this online. I think we should do
that. Yeah.
And as always, if you need any resources, you can always reach out to us too. I mean, we're not experts at all, but we do.
No, but like you now know exactly what I experienced.
Yeah.
And
we can help you with resources or just anything.
If you just want to gab and gossip and just.
We're always there. This was a little bit of a deeper, I don't say darker because that's one of the big things that misconceptions when I was reading about grief. It's not dark. It's not always dark.
It's just serious.
And it's just one of those topics. It's taboo. Nobody really talks about it because it's like, what can you say? What can't you say? And I'll be the first to admit, as your best friend, there's times where I will not avoid topics with you. But here's a good example. So your mom, Mama Parker, Mama, don't tell me, Greenhorn.
Greencorn.
Greencorn.
It's German.
I might.
Sounds really weird, green corn, but it's German.
I was gonna say Mama Greenie is what I was gonna say.
I wish it was just green, like Rachel Green. I always wish that I was just like Joey Green.
But she loved Garfield.
Yeah.
And so sometimes when I go to annoy you in the morning and send you gifts, there's one of Garfield on I don't know what his name is. John's face, like, you know, trying to wake him up.
Always send it.
And I always refrain from sending that
one. I'm telling you right now, always send it.
I always jump over it because I'm like, no, Garfield was her favorite, right? So those are, you probably didn't know that.
Yep. No,
and those are things that, like, you know, I would avoid.
But I mean, that is good. I mean, it's good too if you know if someone has been through something and you're not sure. It's good to refrain.
I just don't want to trigger anything.
And it's good to talk about it with them. Like you just did.
So
right
we're
now.
still bumbling through, and Joey will be the first to tell you. So if you are going through something, I hate saying hit us up, but hit us up.
Hit us up.
Slide it. You know what? We like to slide into the DMs. So. We would make this episode sexual.
Here we go. I mean, you know what? Mama knows her boy.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, no, this was good.
This was good.
All right. Yeah. So, as always,
stay flirty.
I was going to say, catch you on the other side.
So, that's Britt's little lingo.
I always say that to Joey. I'm like, we'll just catch you on the other side of things.
She's always like, we'll catch you on the other side. And I come back with, I'm not going to be there, but okay.
You do.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.